All right. Well, hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Heromakers Podcast. And we're now in 2021 and season 2. Woohoo!
Woohoo!
And this is very exciting, right?
Totally good.
Totally exciting. And we were talking offline, and I was very excited about 2021. But then yesterday happened in the United States. And if you guys are living in the United States, you probably know we had chaos and anarchy. Not sure what that was about. And I thought we were going to be done like talking about this country and all of our problems. Like I was really hopeful. And somebody posted on social media this great little meme, and it said like that I'm going to cancel my subscription to 2021. I tried the 7-day trial and I'm not happy.
Oh.
I thought, whoa, isn't that? But you know me, I'm a 7. I'm the Enneagram 7. I'm the eternal optimist, and so I am still claiming joy for this year, right, Anne? Anne, what are you claiming for this year? What is your
hope?
Hope and joy.
Mm-hmm.
Those are 2 great things. And here's why I love the podcast, Anne, is that we have all these amazing people on who talk about those 2 things separate together and have great stories. And that's why I was like excited about today's guest, and because she has an amazing story, and we were talking offline, and I just really like her a lot. I think we should be friends, Aalia. I think we should be friends.
We're already friends.
We're already friends. So I want to welcome to the podcast Aalia Lanius. Is that how you say your last name? Lanius?
Lanius. Yeah.
And Aalia is coming to us from California. And you launched this great organization called Unsugercoated Media, which we're going to talk about. But basically, you're encouraging people who have been through trauma and who have just been through significant things through storytelling, I love your emphasis on relationship building, networking, kind of confronting our problem of loneliness and isolation. So we're going to get into all of those kind of things. So you launched this great organization. You have this amazing background, and you're a published author of 2 books. Is that right? 2
that
books?
Is correct. So far, right. I'm working on the 3rd one now.
It's hard to write a book, Aalia, isn't it? It's just like,
well, it's not as much. The technicality part of it is tough, but either fiction works, and that's my time as a creative. I really get into telling a story, weaving something that just, it's always my ultimate joy when I write something and then somebody comes back and says, I had an emotional impact. I felt that. Then that's what I love doing. That's really my true love, is creating literature that speaks to someone's existence in some ways. Yeah, in a lot of ways.
It's so important. It's so important. And we talk a lot here on the podcast about kind of breaking stigmas when we tell our stories, right? Like the power of just breaking the silence, and how that not only encourages other people but also ourselves. Like it allows healing to begin stuff. So Aalia, can you start just by telling us a little bit about yourself and your upbringing, a little about when you were younger, and then some background.
Yeah, okay, so I, short as possible, I grew up in Napa, California. I'm a California native. My family has been, like, my great grandfather was actually an LAPD officer in the 70s. Funny enough, I just recently found this out. A lot of my family was originally like LA, my mom's side of the family, which was where I was raised. They go back in this country like 200 years, Confederate. Actually, they fought on the Confederate side of the Civil War, truth be told. But my grandparents, after the riots in the 70s, so I was born in 1975. My grandparents, they just, at that time, they were like, this kind of what we're seeing now a little bit. They're like, these riots, this craziness, let's just take our little happy butts up to Napa, where it's really nice and quaint, especially in that time. It's very different now when I go back. I'm like, this is not the Napa I grew up in, but it was a very interesting background. So I'm multicultural. My dad is an immigrant. As I said, my mom's family, very, very, been here a long time, very American. And my parents divorced before I even knew I never knew them married. They divorced really quickly. And so I was raised with my mom's side of the family. I looked like my father. I didn't look like my mom's side of the family. I was reminded of that quite often, and how much my mother hated my father.
Mm.
I wasn't really raised around him, and then it was a very strict upbringing. And as a kid, I hated it. I'm not going to lie. I was just having this conversation with my 13-year-old daughter last night. She was like, "If your parents were strict and you didn't like it, why do you do it?" And I'm like, "Because now I look back and realize they were trying to protect me. They're trying to keep me from doing the stupid stuff I was trying to do." But I was very I was rebellious a little bit. But the way that my family handled it, especially my mom, it was like, "Well, you want to hit the door? There it is. You're 14. Go on out there and show me that you can take care of yourself." Not the most emotionally intelligent decision, but it was her decision nonetheless. And so as a result, I did end up homeless. My dad, he didn't know what to do. It was just, I had two emotionally unintelligent parents who didn't know what to do with me. And I unfortunately got lost in that, and I ended up homeless at 14. I had to be on my own. I ended up making choices that eventually led me to like a girls' Bible school. I graduated with a degree in biblical studies. I started working, and I just had a very difficult entrance into adult life. Let me tell you that. Like, my background without, just it was very chaotic. But I was always like this good person, right? Like, I always wanted to do things. I was volunteering at orphanages, but my life was a mess. I didn't know how to help anyone else barely. I knew I wanted to help other people, but I was still trying to figure out how to help myself. And so it took a life of a lot of different twists and turns, but that detriment also created a spark to fight for more, and eventually got to the point where I figured out how to do that. I started my own company by the time I was 25 years old. I eventually went back to school. I graduated with honors. I got an international business degree. I went to law school. I built with my ex-husband. We were one of the initial Metro PCS dealers, and we built a multi-million-dollar company. And I just had all these crazy experiences. And then at 38 years old, I divorced from my ex-husband. And that was as a result of toxic relationship. It was a very toxic relationship. It wasn't as healthy as I had hoped it would be. And I started over. But this time I started out with a very clear idea of what I did not want, what I did want in my life. I got remarried, and now I'm a mom of 4, a grandmother of 1, and like so many others, I'm actually really enjoying my journey in life at this time, because I finally have that clarity of like, okay, now I know what I'm doing. And I mean, I've been doing good things all along, but now I'm like, wait, not only do I know what I'm doing now, but oh my God, I love what I am doing.
Yeah.
So,
and I'll say, I love that not that I love it for you, that it took you a long time to discover like kind of this, what you were made for. But I love that you weren't 20. Like, it
Right.
took a lot of life experiences, all this stuff. Can we go back really quick? Because
Sure.
that's a lot. Like, you just gave us a lot of information.
And I skipped some parts too, because I'm like, we only got how much time?
I know you skipped some parts, which I want to go back to some of those parts too. But okay, 14, you leave. Were you completely then on your own from 14 on? Did you go back home? What was the role of your family, like the interaction with you and your family during this time?
Well, I mean, I was literally abandoned. Well, I was sent to my dad. My mom said, "You want to leave?" And, I kind of I remember trying to run away from home once. And then I came back 7 days later. This was all before, like when I officially, after 14, left and was never brought back to my mother's home again. But she sent me to my dad's. And my dad, actually, there was an interaction where he just didn't want us. Like, he sent us to an aunt. My aunt didn't want us. And he literally one night, he gave my brother 50 cents. I had a 13-year-old brother. He gave my brother 50 cents. This was in San Diego. He said, "Come back in about 3 weeks and I'll try and find some place for you to live." Now, mind you, he had a 4-bedroom home. This was not like my dad was poor or anything or didn't have means. He just didn't want to deal with kids who he had to address issues with. And partly probably, yes, we were children of divorce. Like, we didn't know him. There's an outcome of that. But instead of saying, "Hey, let's get therapy," or "Let's sit down," it was like, let me just throw you out on the street because I don't know how to deal with you. He took me to school the next day after that, and he dropped me off, and he never picked me up. Mm-hmm. My brother and I ended up finding each other through all that. And the police department who we went to ended up having to take my brother and I to a shelter, a homeless shelter for teens in San Diego. And I just found a family in Northern California who was willing to take us in. I went back to my dad. The cops actually said to my dad, you can't just abandon your kid on the street. You have to do something or you're going to jail. So he sent us to that family. Things still splintered off from there, but largely from that moment forward, it was my responsibility to figure out where I was going to be at, who was taking care of me. And it wasn't always good situations. For a moment. It just, but yeah, that was kind of what happened. And I never went back to live with my family again.
Mm-hmm. So where did that come from? Like just your ability to care for yourself and to kind of start to dream big, right? Like you said, by the age of 25, you had this corporation with your husband, right? Your first husband.
Well, that was
or
actually, no, that was by
yourself?
myself. Yeah, I
Okay.
did multiple. I worked in healthcare, as I had told you. And then I had my own profession. Like I'd been working since I was 15 years old was when I got my first job. And actually, by the time I was 18, I had a resume with real qualifications. And I think that, well, my mother, though selfish and though not the most emotionally intelligent, she was very smart. She is very smart. She was a businesswoman. She was an entrepreneur. But my family had this very tough love, which is ironic because that's the name of my very first book. Tough love was kind of like, our family was like, if you don't follow the rules, you're cut from the team. It was very mafia like almost, you're cut. You don't want to be here, then get the heck out. And of course, in their mind, I think that they always had this ideology that, well, they'll come back. They'll come back sorry because they're going to understand that the world is tough out there. But what happens is some of us are actually resourceful enough. And I think just the refusal to give up was what really kept me going. And when I was 18 years old, the other significant thing that happened was I read Maya Angelou's story. Maya Angelou's story changed my life. Like, not being over dramatic, not like, that book changed my total perspective. Oh wait, someone can mess up and then recover and be better and like still have amazing future and hope. I was like, that to me meant everything. And as a writer, even, that's what I want people to still always find hope in the story, because that's what happened for me. So that hope really sparked, like I always use that word because it made me say, hey, wait a minute, I could do that too.
So that's interesting because what you're saying reminded me of a quote I've read from Maya Angelou. There's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you. Talk to us about that. Like, talk to us about like how that's played out in your own life. Like, kind of, you're getting your story out.
Well, that was
authentic.
That was the thing. People ask me, sorry, and I didn't mean to jump ahead, but I know where you're going, and I can easily answer it because, so when I wrote Tough Love, it depicts my life. It's a biographical fiction novel, my first, but it was just my authentic, me finally telling my story. And yes, a lot of people didn't know my story. I get messages where they're like, you've inspired me. And I'm like, you don't even know it all. So let me share with you. So I felt very empowered. It wasn't cathartic. It was empowering to tell my story and say, hey, whether somebody likes it or not, I'm telling it. But what was more impactful was one of the messages I got afterwards, where because I depicted the domestic violence that I did experience with my ex-husband, a woman wrote me afterwards and said, because of reading your book, I'm actually filing for divorce from my abusive husband. And that is exactly, I get it where she says that, because whenever people would just have an ideology of or an idea of what I went through, but not really have a clearer picture, it was important for me to share that with them. It just came to that point where I'm like, I have to share the story. I have to tell you what really happened. And hopefully that leads you to maybe realize you don't have to put up with that. You don't have to, I'm very traditional. I was raised very traditional. You get married, you stay married, no matter what. I couldn't bear that burden myself. I chose differently.
So Alia, yesterday, I ran into somebody that that works at the school system that my kids are in. And I just made a comment about her clothing, and it led to this conversation about her sharing how she was in a domestic violence situation. Like, I couldn't even believe it. We're standing on the sidewalk and she's like sharing all this with me. And I was like, what? Like, I was like blown away. And what she said is, even like in that context, she said, I never thought I would like be in that relationship. I never thought I would be one of those people that would stay in that relationship, in that kind of, right? And it like, and it can happen to anybody. And so like, I think what you're doing with your book and the storytelling is critically important, because a lot of times people feel so isolated, right?
Right.
And so even by saying things out loud, it opens the door for people to realize, oh, like, I can be empowered. Like you're saying with that woman, I filed for divorce.
Right.
Empowered to make that next step, right? Talk to us about the power of storytelling.
Well, it's in everything that we do. I mean, ladies, have you seen The End Game and Infinity Wars? These are like my two references.
Yes.
If when you feel the impact, I have the pleasure of knowing some incredible individuals who were involved in the comic film world, and I never thought comics had such an impact on social culture and just what we do, our morals, our ethics. And as I've really, like, when I watch Wonder Woman and I see the script, like having the certain conversations or talking about greatness within us, that is a power of storytelling. We are often, and when you think about folklore and how wisdom and knowledge and cultural preservation has been handed down since ancient times, since they were painting characters on a cave to, continuing, storytelling has been critical to our history, and to and also, like, to your point a second ago, to destigmatizing certain things. And I feel like that's where storytelling is really taking a turn right now. I'm so honored to be in a group of people in the media world who take responsibility for creating socially conscious media. Like, that is incredible. And so I don't want to just tell a story. I want to entertain, but I want to educate. I want to give people a different perspective, a different idea. And hopefully, and a lot of times that does lead to empathy. It spurs action. Look at Blood Diamond. How many people's mindsets were changed after the movie Blood Diamond came out? Because now, oh, wait, hold on. There's a story that just told me a whole lot more about this.
Yeah.
So, that's where storytelling to me is very, very impactful. And writers don't get enough credit. I seriously think we should be like, we should be celebrities too. But I jokingly say it. And some of them are. But I mean, like, I just don't think, like, everything we see on TV, every commercial, the tissue commercial that makes you cry, it all started with somebody storyboarding that. So storytelling is incredibly powerful, and it's a very you can do good with it and you can do bad with it, and that's something also that I'm very careful about.
I really think, just hearing you talk, like, I think that what could happen in our lives is we have choices, right? But what we don't realize, we have choices. When you're 14, you had a choice. Like, like, or you could just be the victim for the rest of your life. You're like, oh, all these bad things happen to me, and this is why I'm like, and or you could actually make a choice to fight. You know what I mean? Fight for survival, fight to figure out how to live, how do you still do good, and how do you contribute to society, even though you've just been dealt like this, like, hand that's kind of rough. And so I feel like even when you write, it's an active choice. Like, you could have your people tell a story about you, or you could write it yourself and tell the story yourself. And I think that that's hugely empowering.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. I have to admit, because people have asked me, so what caused me to sit down though and also start writing my second book. My second book has won 3 awards. It's very hard hitting on racism. It is won 3 awards for multicultural fiction. And I think that when they ask me what caused you to write this, was being on Facebook and seeing all the negativity, seeing such hatred being thrown at one another. And I was always the person, I'm really not an antagonist. I try to really have productive conversations. I don't start calling each other names. I don't like being called names, so I don't do it to other people. Do unto others as you would have done unto yourself, type of thing. And so I just said, you know what? And it's not worth my energy to sit here and argue with somebody on Facebook, or, go back. I'm trying so hard to paint a different picture for you, give you an alternate thought on their concept or perception, but it's not working. So you know what? I'm not going to do this. I'm going to sit down at my computer and I'm going to write a story that is so much more powerful and shows you through this story what I am talking about and what you're missing and why you don't see the detriment of that type of ideology to our existence as a society and within humanity. So it's crazy, you know, when you say that, it's like, yeah, I sat down to write a story with the pure intent of creating a different lens for somebody to put on and hopefully create more empathy and understanding of one another through that story. So yeah, exactly.
So Aalia, tell us about Unsugarcoated Media and how you launched it, where the idea came from.
So Unsugarcoated Media is it's kind of deceptive in some sense because people are like, okay, because it's a nonprofit. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, but we are a nonprofit media social enterprise. So originally we launched that to publish because I've had a nonprofit before. I'm a cancer survivor. I had cancer families one day at a time. Fundraising is very hard. And I'm a businesswoman. So I know if you don't have something, if you got to create sustainability, right? So that's a whole different podcast. But I decided I would publish my books through Unsugarcoated Media. And then that way, all proceeds go to the organization. I don't actually take any money from my books. It creates a line of revenue. And then on top of it, it expanded. So it went from that. Then we launched an event called EmpowerCon. EmpowerCon is a one-day empowerment. It's got spoken word. It's like TEDx with performances, but everything is empowerment driven. And it's just it's an incredible day intended to create connection, growth, healing. But it is one day. It's just one incredible day, right? And then I wanted to continue that journey. So December of last year, I launched my podcast, Unsugarcoated with Aalia. It was originally Unsugarcoated with Aalia and Alex. I had a co-host, and then after 2 seasons, she dropped off. I love her and miss her, but you know, it's a different journey for everyone, and that's okay. So I've continued on. We are award nominated. We were nominated for Best Use of Podcast for Social Good for the Shorty Social Good Award. And I just continue. I'm in season 6. And what we really do, again, as you said, is what makes us a charity is everything that we're creating is intended to empower the community, to help people, you know, like EmpowerCon, we're built on the concept of ask the issues that need to be asked, or admit the issues that we have to deal with in society. Ask the questions that will arrive at solutions that hopefully that get us to where we need to be, into a better place, and then adjust our behavior, right? If you are on a rocket and you're going to the moon and your trajectory gets off, you better course correct or you're not going to make it. So we want to help course correct our communities. This event was always priced either at free or $35, even though we had A-list celebrities come and speak, because I felt that this was something that is critical for our communities. I am not there to sell $3,000 a ticket and provide, you know, it is about teaching our communities what they need to know. The people that I love Tony Robbins, or, you know, I love that, I know, but what people get there, if they got it at the micro level down in our communities, I think that it would affect in a very positive way. So I wanted to make it attainable, reasonable, and something people would enjoy. And we just continue to do that through our organization. And I also collaborate with other nonprofits. I do empowerment presentations for youth and, you know, teach on resilience and how to empower yourself through creative writing. Like, people don't realize you can advocate. You can learn how to advocate for yourself through creative writing. And so that's what we do right now. We also are in the process of producing films, some shorts, some features, but just whatever our name is tied to. You know, and again, we will also not just produce and publish my books, other authors as well, other creatives, but we just love the idea of knowing that we have a mission of creating socially conscious media. We're not here to sugarcoat it. That's kind of the thing. People are like, well, where does Unsugarcoated? Because we're not just here to empower people, but we're going to do it with real authenticity, you know, like unsugarcoated, not necessarily going to make you feel well all the time, but it's going to be what you need because we're coming honest and authentically.
Well, and that's what I was going to say, like with the name of your nonprofit is the Unsugarcoated, because I think a lot of times, right, like media, when we hop on social media, when we see ads run, like they make us feel bad, right? Like we're comparing ourselves to other people. We kind of have this belief that we should be doing more, doing better, being somebody different. We should be taller, we should be skinnier, we should be whatever we should be. And so there's this comparison game, and it's so harmful. And so can can we just quickly, okay, so it's 2021, and I would really love for all of us to kind of start off this year with loving ourselves as we are, and to not feel like we have to put on kind of this persona. Can you help us to do that? Like, your own journey includes a lot of kind of different trauma points, I would say, right? And like, what does your self-talk look like in terms of loving yourself, seeing yourself as you are, and just being real?
That started, I'll tell you really quick. So this journey started for me when I was dealing with my health issues. And I was at a point in my health issues where I was very, very sick. I didn't know if I was going to live. I remember making a video to tell my kids goodbye just in case, because I had 3 kids at that time that were still small. 2 of them were under the age of 5. And I had a Post-it note that said, I want to live. I want to love. I want to hug my kids. Sorry. And this Post-it sticker revolved in my mirror. It went to my refrigerator. It just went wherever my eye vision was. And it really became a mantra. And it helped me through the years. But of course, once I got better, I kind of had let go of that habit, right? A little bit. And then when I got married, and in 2017, I gave birth to my youngest daughter, who just turned 4 the other day, January 5th, 2017. And my husband, from the time she was probably like 3 months old, he started sitting her up in front of the mirror. And he would say, he would tell her, repeat after me. She's 3 months old. She doesn't even speak yet, obviously. He's saying, I am beautiful. I am strong. I am courageous. And ladies, I have to tell you that when I launched EmpowerCon, this is something that I tell everybody, please look in the mirror. Let's say it. I'm strong. I'm beautiful. I'm courageous. I looked at my husband. I was amazed. I said, imagine what we would be like as women, as people, if from the onset of our life. So the thing is, it's cool about the story. My daughter eventually got to the point where she could talk. And I was so blown away the first time she looked in the mirror, and with her little, I am beautiful. I am strong. I am courageous. And we tell her, what are you, Sophia? I am beautiful. I am strong. I am courageous. I think we really, in our most deepest, darkest moments, have that reminder. But even also in our happiest, it's not just about when we're down. It's about when we're up. Dang it, I'm beautiful. I am strong. I am courageous. And those self-affirmations may seem corny to some people, but I don't know about you ladies, but honestly, when I say those, I can't help but feel better. Right? So that's one of my ways. What do you think?
Oh, I love it. I think so often we're our worst self-critic, right? Like we would never talk to ourselves the way that we talk to other people. It just,
Exactly.
we never talk to other people the way that we talk to ourselves. And so what you're saying is like kind of the verbal affirmation, even the written affirmation of something that maybe your mind hasn't even gotten yet. You're beautiful. You're loved. You're gifted. You're talented. Keep saying that, like the repetitive pattern of that.
Yeah. Well, I remember reading, I cannot remember the name. I have it upstairs, but it's a book on happiness. And when you talk to people or learn about the study of happiness and what actually makes us happy, there's a story of a man who was married to his wife, and he did an experiment. So he could come to a point where he found himself constantly saying negative things. Now, I know maybe none of you've never said anything negative about your spouse. Okay. Like for anyone out there you might not get this, but for some of us out there, we're like, well, he's kind of annoying. It's like, oh, well, he's always late. Well, he's doing this. And he said that he found himself kind of criticizing his wife a lot in his head. So he made it an actual effort where for 30 days straight, he wrote in a diary, and he said to himself, and he wrote it, I'm going to find something positive to say about my wife. Wow, she's an amazing mother. She does my laundry for me, or she's brilliant. I don't want to make it all about house. I would have to go back to the book to see exactly kind of the examples, but I know that they were all, whether it was small or big, he found ways to celebrate who his wife is. And let me tell you, after 30 days, the conclusion was, oh my God, I love my wife so much more because I'm actively paying attention and looking for the things that are her positive qualities and not focused on the negative. And then he became happier as a result of it because of his relationship. And I think it just speaks to what you just said. We feed ourselves. It's like we eat food, but we also feed our brain. It is quite natural for negative things to come in our head. but it's like that immune system defense where we've got to create that defense that says, okay, yeah, you know what? That may be true, but a little bit, but at the same token, I am beautiful. I'm strong. I'm courageous. I can get through this. I'm having a tough time. I don't feel like doing this, but you know what? I'm not going to give up. I believe in myself. And I think in speaking to the people around us, like especially with our relationships, it is important. Focus on the positive, not always the negative.
Thanks so much.
Right?
Like, can we go way back to what you said almost at the beginning of this podcast? And it stuck with me. I'm still thinking about it. Where you're describing your whole life. You gave us a really quick trajectory of your life. And then you said, now is when you feel like you know who you are and what you're all about. Like, can you talk to us more about that? Because I feel like women really can relate to that.
Well, yeah, because we go through different stages in our life. I don't want people to, like, I've always known, I don't know. I think I've always been involved in wonderful things, you know, like I've always done wonderful, even with my ex business with my ex-husband, like we got a lot involved in the community. We were good owners and we're just business people. So, you know, but you know, I was a wife, and then I like I just mentioned, I have a 4-year-old child, right? Long answer that I have a 23-year-old, I have a 15 and a 13-year-old, and then I have a 4-year-old. Literally for 3 decades, I've been taking care of kids, it feels like, right? So for the 20s, I mean, all of the late in the 2000s, 2010s, and then back again. And so I feel like women are often, especially if you are a mom and a wife, it takes a while for you to sometimes feel like you're actually doing what you really want to do. And I feel like for me, the real catalyst, I mean, was one opportunity. I had a husband who now was like, hey, what you want to do is what you should be doing, right? So I had the support now. And then I finally just had that clarity of, yeah, this is what I want to do. And, you know, second acts, we're okay with that. It's okay to reinvent yourself every few years. It's okay that you don't have everything figured out at 20 years old. I sure in the heck did it. And I don't really know a 20-year-old that does. I mean, even if they're good at 20, you still don't know what you're going to be like. Right? How can you guys agree at 20, or if you had a conversation with yourself at 20, 30, I mean, and I'm in the 40s, totally different conversations, totally different, you know, not, you know, person wise, but just your knowledge, your bandwidth, all these things. So I get excited because, I finally arrived at that one transition that I'm like, whoa, this is the one I'm digging. I've been through that door, but I love this door. So hopefully that answers a little bit more.
You know, Aalia, it's interesting because I think sometimes in order to find ourselves, like sometimes we look at our values, right? Or like things that are just as we assess our own life, things that are important to us. And I read this great little book once by this guy named Leighton Ford. And the book is called Let Your Life Speak. And so, what he's saying is that basically, like, you're not going to tell yourself what to do. Like you can't just pretend to be something you're not or whatever. You have to actually listen to, like, okay, what does inspire you? What does move you? What does give you joy? What gives you hope? Where's your mission? Where are you mission driven? Like, and you listen. It's like taking time to actually assess your own self. Like you've done a lot of different things. You know, you said you were in healthcare, you were in the music industry, you've done business, and now you're in media, storytelling, all these things. Now, all of those probably have led you to the point that you are. But I can imagine there's also this, right, just like sitting for 5 minutes and saying, like, what do I want to do? Like, what really does light up my life? And taking kind of that self-assessment. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think we all do that. Even when I started Unsugercoated Media too, it was like, okay, we're going to publish the book so that we can do this. But I still didn't have a full understanding of what exactly we were going to be doing. And I think that as you go down the road and you start to say, oh, okay, and you create opportunity, that changes where you go. I mean, I find life to be kind of funny. I don't know about you guys. Have you ever like taken a wrong turn, went somewhere, and then you run into someone and you're like, oh, if I would have gone home and just done this, it would have had a totally different outcome. Or, you know, life is just funny like that. And I kind of am of the mindset of, yes, everything happens the way that it's supposed to happen. Everything happens for a reason, is definitely. But I think that falls more also because I'm like you, I'm a silver lining. I'm a resilient personality. And as one of the traits is that we always look for the silver lining, and you're aware that you can't have the good without the bad. And, so going through that, but it's so important what you just said, really it is important to take the time to have that conversation. And like I said, for me, part of it was, had I always told myself what I wanted? Yes, but it did take, and I will admit, I give my husband credit where it is due, because it was very odd for him to just, I remember we were walking, I remember it clear as day, and he just says, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to do? I'm like, I could do anything. I could, we were talking about it, and he's like, but what do you want to do? I'm like, oh, that's nice, like in that sense.
That's a hard question to answer for a lot of people.
Right. And it wasn't like I said, I said initially I want to write, but I said it because I want to write my books because I want to help other people through my stories. And that was where that started with, and just identifying, because, and I think, like, it kind of going back to what we'd said just a second ago, like, as a woman, you can feel pulled from so many different directions. Even now, I am not going to BS anybody and tell you that even running Unsugercoated Media doesn't take time away from my family. Yes, I make sacrifices, and it is work but I, it's what I want to do, and I know that I'm helping people, and I feel that I'm showing I'm being a good role model to my family and my kids. And I do, like everyone else, I hope and try to create a situation where there's going to be good outcomes, positive outcomes. And so far that's happening. And that's what I stay focused on right now, but yeah, it's really hard for us as women. I think we feel guilt.
Yeah.
I gotta talk, like, guilt is a real thing at times. If you're a mom and you're like, oh, I'm pursuing my own dream here, that happens. Some people don't, and that's okay. But you shouldn't, because you should feel very, confident in what you're doing and the role model that you're providing for your family too. So
Exactly. I think your kids need to see you thriving and doing what you're good at. I really have, I've heard a couple of times you mentioned the word empathy, and I think that's what I just see that as a theme of what you're trying to do, of like connect with other people on a really deep level. So in your mind, and that's a hero trait that we have on our website, FYI.
I agree. It should be, because empathy, not everybody has it.
So help us understand what that means for you. What does it mean to have empathy?
Yeah, empathy doesn't necessarily always mean that you're the type of person that cries when you see a tissue commercial, by the way, but it's probably a sure sign that you are, a little bit at least. I think, empathy for me, okay, when I wrote my second book, and it was very hard hitting, I wanted people, I said, listen, this is not a politically driven conversation. This is a humanitarian one. I have a very popular quote. It's in the back of my book. I've said it repeatedly. I said it on my podcast, but I do believe that until we learn to see each other as a species, as humans first, people will suffer that never had to. Children will die that shouldn't. And unfortunately, people will suffer that never had to in the first place. And I think that what creates connection and understanding for people is empathizing, is understanding. Like, let's say I climbed Mount Everest. Well, you've never climbed Mount Everest, so you would be like, I have no understanding of what that is. But if I say, but I was scared I was going to die, or I was afraid I was going to fail, or I didn't know what was ahead of me. Those are things that we can relate to as human beings, because we understand fear and we understand challenges. And so I think that empathy is so critical to a lot of the conversations where you see people in this world right now, especially, and I'm, without going into it, but when we see what happened on January 6th, where people stormed the Capitol, and you have these, what I see, people that have very similar desires in life, but somehow there's just a disconnect. There's a disconnect. There is, and then some have no similar desire, but there are many that do. And I think that by creating empathy and understanding of one another, that is how we can bridge gaps. Yelling at each other, fighting each other, killing each other, harming each other is not how we're going to do it. And so I prefer empathy that may make me sound like a flower child, and may make me sound very kumbaya. But guess what? I'd rather take that road than something that would cause me to harm another individual who doesn't deserve it in my life. Like, that's the road I'd rather take. So yeah, empathy. I mean, empathy is huge.
Well, I agree, but a follow-up question, I guess, just considering the people that were storming the Capitol yesterday, what would it take for them to even enter into empathy?
I mean, it would take really sitting down and shutting up. A lot of people. No, I mean, that's going to sound, they're going to look great. People are going to come my freaking front door in a second. No, I don't. I mean that. Even I have to sit down and shut up sometimes. I don't understand every single issue. I don't agree with every single policy, but I've got to sit down and shut up. And if these policies in place don't benefit all of us, not just one particular segment over another, that's a problem. And I think another thing is the rhetoric that's being pushed. This us versus they, or us versus them, very, very detrimental to our society, and is a big lever of history and anthropology. We have a habit in history of messing good things up. The most strongest empires have fallen because of pride, prejudice, and just, lying to the people. So I don't want to see that happen here. And I think that empathy is one way where you can actually tell the truth, by the way, in following that up, without necessarily, if you create empathy, you're disarming them. You're not making people feel so I'm on the offensive. You're like, wait, okay, so I get that, because I also feel the same way. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? But yeah.
And I would say that, like, if we don't have empathy, if all of us cannot seek that and desire it, then we're just in deep trouble. Like, our world is just in deep trouble. I think it's just one of those gifts, those are hero traits, like that. It's an absolute non-negotiable right now. And the great thing about empathy too is that, it allows us to step inside of other people's stories, right? And once we do that, then, like what you're saying, not us versus them, right? Then we see that clearer. We see that, okay, we're not going to demonize other people now, because we're actually taking the time to understand, like, why are you storming the Capitol right now? Like, what is behind that? And that's the power of empathy, is right. It actually allows us to become more connected to people who think radically different than we do. And that's why I think it's a non-negotiable, because I think without it, we will always be separated. We will always be on two sides of this imaginary line that we have drawn. But Aalia, I've loved this conversation, and I don't know if I ever told you this, but I have this saying that last year. So Aalia, I quit my job last year, in part to start the Heromakers movement. But I have this saying, and I always say, do what you love with people you love, and make the world a little bit better. And what you're saying is reminding me of that, because we're talking about loving ourselves, seeing the potential in ourselves, being able to take, our pains, our brokenness, offer them as a gift to the world. And then you ask, like, what do we love? Who do we love? And, if we have all been wired to uniquely to offer something to this world, what does that look like? And so I would just challenge, like, all of our listeners to think about that. Like, how have you been wired? And what uniquely can you offer to our world this year? A, B, how could you love yourself more? Because I think all of us need a little bit of that as well. So Aalia, where can we find you on social media?
My social media is Aalia _unsugarcoated. My main place is IG. Okay. We do our Unsugarcoated Media has a Facebook page, and we have our website, www.unsugarcoatedmedia.com. People can sign up for a newsletter. We send them out periodically, just for, like, when we're having events and things like that. Stay connected. We just, like I said, we're wrapping up season 6 with the podcast. And that's like Unsugarcoated with Aalia is on iHeart, Spotify, Spreaker, as well as a visual is on YouTube.
Okay. And we'll link to all of that. Hey, if you ever want me to like guest co-host with you, I would love that. We'll link to all of that. And I'm very grateful. We're very grateful for the work that you're doing and your authenticity and your honesty of storytelling. And we hope this was encouragement to all of you guys. If you like it, give us a 5-star review, share it with your friends. And welcome to 2021, you guys. It's going to be an amazing year, whether we believe it or not right now. I'm going to believe it. And so we'll see you guys next time.